Bob no more.
Greek.
I'm not. No, man.
I just want to be clear.
Bob shut me down
How many times has Shamsi pulled you to one side saying I've come here to talk with Bob? Twice?
I'm free from this.
Twice? Don't sound like the Dower team. Take it. Be honest.
He's going to come for you today.
How many times?
He's coming for you today, Bob.
Who's betting he won't actually want to have a conversation?
Bob,
Who's betting he doesn't actually want to have a conversation?
quick question, Bob.
Yeah, go on.
Do you condemn or condone? Do you condemn or condone 1 Samuel 15:3, Joshua 6:21, where it says to go and utterly destroy? Do you condemn or condone the killings of sheep and donkeys by your God?
No.
Do you condemn or condone it?
I condone it.
You condone it.
Yes.
So you support the killing of donkeys. What
No.
did the donkeys do to your God?
No. Let me answer that question. It's a fair question. It's the kind of typical question that members of the Dawah team ask, and we have to be clear as to why they ask the question. The reason why Muslims ask the question, about this passage in the Old Testament is because they are embarrassed by their prophet Muhammad, who raped and murdered in the 7th century and who they acclaim as the best representative. And that is why they go to this passage.
What has that got to do with
Now, to address the passage, the passage was in history. It is what God commanded in the past. It is not something that any Christian would feel obliged to do today. Why? Because Christians interpret the Bible through a prism of covenants. There was a covenant with Adam. There was a covenant with Noah. There was a covenant with Abraham. There was a covenant with Moses. And there is a new covenant with Jesus Christ. Each of those covenants is different from the one before it. And therefore, what applies in an old covenant does not necessarily carry into the new covenant. So when they ask us this question about these Old Testament passages where God commands Israel to utterly destroy, Christians read those passages as something to do with the past, not a command for the present.
But wasn't it the same God?
By contrast,
wasn't it the
same God? Yes, same God.
Thank you very much.
By contrast, Muslims believe that Muhammad is the best example today. So when he commanded his followers to rape, he was doing that as the best example. When he commanded his followers to take slaves, he was doing that as the best example. When he commanded a mother to be ripped in two by camels, he did that as the best example. When he commanded his followers to have sex with their slaves, he did that as the best example. Christians have a difference in our faith to Islam. The Old Testament does not apply in its fullness today. There is a new covenant, and Muslims would do better to criticize our faith based upon what it actually teaches.
Bob the liar.
Why am I lying?
Why are you talking like that for, when clearly the God of the Old Testament
What am I lying
and the God
about?
of the New Testament is the same?
Does the God of the Old Testament say there'll be a new covenant?
He said utterly destroy, and you talk about male and female slaves, yeah? Bondmaids, yeah?
I asked
what about
you a question.
Leviticus 25:44.
Notice he doesn't want to answer the question.
What about the bondmaids?
Notice he doesn't want to answer the question.
25:44.
I'll ask you again.
What about the bondmaids?
You're saying that I lied.
Yes.
Right. Am I lying about the idea that there is a new and an old covenant?
No, you're lying about Islam, Bob.
Are you saying that Christ doesn't establish a new covenant?
Bob, you're lying about Islam.
So I'm not lying about my own faith then?
Christ said that he's got to fulfill...
So I'm not lying about my own faith then?
Bob.
Answer the question.
Bob.
Am I lying?
Yes, you
Answer
are.
the question.
You are lying.
Listen to the question.
You're lying on both of
He
them.
doesn't even know. Right.
Bob, you're lying on both.
So,
you know
let
why?
me just prove him wrong.
You know why?
Let me just prove him wrong.
Because God
He has just said that the Christian faith does not teach a new covenant.
Now
That
you're
is
changing.
what he said.
You're changing it though.
That
You
is
said
what
you
he
never came
said.
to change.
Listen
But
to
you're
this.
changing.
So now let us compare the claim of the Taoist in his ignorance about the Christian faith when he said that I was lying about the
one
Christian
dot shall be
faith
changed.
in teaching
Not
a
one
new
dot shall
covenant,
be changed.
and compare it to the words of Jesus himself. Because the Muslims at the corner work to a script. They never actually pick up a Bible.
So do you,
they
Bob.
never actually
So do you,
study.
Bob.
They never actually learn.
Same,
No,
same to you, Bob.
this is what Jesus said. Are you listening?
Yes.
This
No,
cup,
yes.
which is poured out for you, is the new covenant
I can't hear you, Bob.
in my
Louder.
blood.
Louder.
Jesus has just said he has established a new covenant that was promised in the Old Testament. Now, sir, are you willing to retract what you said
It's
when
the
you
new
said that I lied about Jesus establishing a new covenant?
Is the new covenant same as the Ten Commandments? Is the new covenant part of the Ten Commandments? Or is it changed from the Ten Commandments?
The Ten Commandments carry over into the new.
So when he says utterly destroy the Amalekites and the donkeys, yeah, it's part of Jesus' teaching as well, isn't it, Bob?
No.
Yes, it is.
Oh, so suddenly a man who didn't even know that Jesus Christ established a new covenant suddenly thinks himself an expert of the Old Testament.
You're not an expert either, Bob.
So, let us be clear. Let us be clear. God says in the Old Testament, this is in Jeremiah, something that my brother here has not bothered to read. This is what God says in the Old Testament. Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not like the old covenant. Did you hear that bit? No, you didn't, because you're not listening. I'll read it to you again. Not
Where's
like
Greek? Where's
the
Greek?
old
I need
covenant,
Greek here as well.
which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. Who brought them out of the land of Egypt? Moses. Who was the Ten Commandments given to? Moses. So Jeremiah the prophet is saying that Yahweh has said that he will establish a new covenant that is not like the covenant of Moses. So when he appeals to the laws of Moses and tries to say that we Christians need to live by them in the new covenant that I've already demonstrated Jesus established at the night of the Last Supper, he is doing it in ignorance of biblical teaching. Why? Because the Dawah team, the Muslims that do evangelism here in the park, are ignorant of the Christian faith. They only have a script to work from that they hear from their teachers in the mosque. And the moment you show them anything that disproves their script, they have nothing to say. So now let me ask you this question. In Jeremiah, God says through the prophet, I will establish a new covenant, not like the covenant that I made with your fathers when I brought them out of Egypt. Who is God referring to? What covenant is God referring to when he says a new covenant, not like the old covenant? Which is the old covenant? Silence!
I don't know, Bob.
Exactly as I said. The moment you take them to a text that disproves their script,
No, you haven't
they have
disproven
nothing to say.
Bob, you haven't disproven nothing.
So I'll ask you again. It says in the text, do a Bible study with me. Behold, days are coming, declares the Lord. So who's speaking? Yahweh. When I will make a new covenant. What did he say? New covenant. What does new mean? New means something new, not something old. Listen carefully. which I made with their fathers in the day. Sorry, it says, not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt. I'll ask you again. The text is clear. There is a new covenant and an old covenant. What is being referred to when it says old covenant?
I don't know about that.
He doesn't know. Why doesn't he know? Because the script that he has learnt in his mosque is not sufficient to deal with the scriptures. That is why he doesn't know.
Scriptures.
Exactly. So that's the new covenant. You say the new covenant replaces the old covenant.
Correct.
Yep.
How
So that means God's old law is being replaced by a new law.
No.
Yes.
A new covenant is replacing an old covenant. Let me explain. Let me explain, because you've already admitted you don't know. Now, if you're here just to argue, you can argue. But if you want to learn, listen, I'll